Welcome to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, and connected to the miraculous energy of unconditional love that I call Mother Mary. If you're a highly sensitive, highly creative entrepreneur or light worker, and you want to magnify your impact and your intuition, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Reverend Frances Faden, interfaith minister, intuitive coach, and author of Meditation is Friendship with God. I can't wait to share miraculous stories, books, meditations, messages, and interviews with other miraculous light workers just like you. Are you ready to magnify your miracles? What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I am so grateful to get to spend some time with you today talking about this awesome book, The Great Apparitions of Mary by Ingo Swann. But before we get into that, let's take a few deep breaths together, just get ourselves grounded and centered, and really getting into the vibration of receptivity so that all this great inspiration can really lift you up. It can nourish your soul. It can expand your consciousness. And if you are driving, please keep your eyes on the road, but you can still bring your awareness to your breath. And breathing in the energy of expansion, breathing out whatever you no longer need. Whatever it is that you most need to hear today or would love to experience, just allow yourself for a few moments to imagine that you've already heard it or received it. And knowing that that is exactly what's going to be happening. Let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude and we can begin. Oh, my friend, I am so excited to share this book with you. This book, which was recommended to me by my sister-in-law, is just amazing. It's called The Great Apparitions of Mary, an examination of 22 Supranormal Appearances. And the author's name is Ingo Swann. And I am recording this in the month of May, which you all know is the month of miracles. And one of the miracles in the month of May happened many years ago in 1917, Mother Mary appearing as Our Lady of Fatima in Fatima, Portugal, right towards the end of World War I, and also right before the Spanish flu pandemic was happening. Mother Mary coming, as she often does, to try to help us to change our karma, to change the tide, and usually through the energy of prayer. It could be rosaries, it could be just heartfelt prayer, but she's always asking us to change our perspective and change our hearts so that we let go, we forgive whatever we need to forgive, and we keep our mind and our heart centered on the divine. And that seems to be her recipe, her prescription for mitigating negative karma. And we can see so many times that she's come to places right before meaning like 10 years or so, right before something major is going to happen. That happened in Rwanda, that happened in Medjugorje. It's still happening in Medjugorje, but it happened right before the war, about 10 years before the war. Mother Mary, I feel like she comes to us to give us an opportunity to change, to give us an opportunity to do something a little bit different. Now, you may or may not be in extreme circumstances like that, where you're living in a country that's, possibly on the brink of war, but I know for me here in the United States, the last several years have been really unsettling. Let's put it that way. And lo and behold, Mother Mary did appear as Our Lady of Woodstock up in Woodstock, New York in 2011, I think it is. I think it's 2011. Several years before we had a lot of the upheaval here in the United States, and we had the people who were white supremacists and neo-Nazis and people marching in streets with tiki torches. I mean, scary, scary stuff. And Mother Mary had come to us then talking about earth changes and things that we needed to do to protect the earth and things that we needed to do to help change the tide. And a big piece of it is always to go in prayer. And I'm excited that next week we're actually going to be talking to the two people who are kind of the stewards of that apparition and keep sharing messages from the lady that's Perdita, Finn, and Clark Strand. And they're going to be talking to us next week. So tune in for that as well. So this book, The Great Apparitions of Mary, written by a man who is known in the psychic world. He's not trying to convert you to Catholicism. He's not trying to convert you to psychism and anything. This book, I feel like, is a gift that he has given the world because it is so wonderful. It is an examination, and it's exactly what it is. It's not trying to prove anything. He talks about the history. He talks about what was going on at the time. He describes these apparitions in such detail. So much research has gone into this book that, again, you don't have to be from any particular faith, but if you love Mother Mary, if you love the Divine Mother, you will love this book because it's like reading this adventure story. And I'll give you an example. Some of the things I wanted to show you. So, I have this app on my phone that will tell me whenever there is an apparition date. And so when I first got the app, I was like, oh, this is good. It'll remind me of the dozen or so apparitions. And I'll tell you, my friends, that thing goes off almost every day. Almost every day there's a story and it says, our Blessed Mother appeared today. Click here for more info. Almost literally every day. This is how available she is for us. This is one of the things I try to help people to see is it's not just a few people. It's not just something that happened in time. Yes, it happened in time and it's happening now. She has always been available for us and she continues to be available for us. And it's one of the things that I love helping people realize is you can connect with her right now in a very, very tangible way. So this book goes through 22 of the apparitions, and again, in a lot of detail. But I want to share this one thing for you because one of the first apparitions that's recorded is in 1531 when Mother Mary appeared in Mexico as Our Lady of Guadalupe, one of the most famous apparitions. And at that time, there was the Spanish colonization of Mexico. And let's just be honest, it was brutal, as most colonization processes are. But then for the native people that were there, they were it just was a massacre, it really was a genocide that was happening. And so Mother Mary appears, and guess what? She appears not as a European-looking lady. She appears looking very much like the native Mexican people. And not only that, she looks like one of the goddesses that they were worshiping at the time. But then there's this lull between 1531 and 1830 when she appears to St. Catherine Labouré in Paris. And I always wondered about that. I'm like, so why did she appear in 1531 and then not appear for almost 300 years? And so this is page 20 of this book. And I'm going to read this to you because, like I said, this is the history. This is fascinating. Before the great 1531 appearance in Mexico, there had been many reports of apparitions of the Holy Mother, some from as early as the 2nd century. After the great apparition at Paris in 1830, there have also been many. But during the long 299-year interval between 1531 and 1830, there is hardly a trace of any apparition of the Holy Mother. This hiatus is sometimes referred to by Marian researchers as the dry period. No one really knows how to explain it, but two momentous factors might apply. Now, see what you think about his conclusion, what he says here. First, the dry period began more or less with the Protestant Reformation, which broke out in Europe in 1517, just when Hernan Cortés was preparing to conquer Mexico. The Catholic Church lost an estimated 10 million adherents during the first 20 years of the Reformation, but by 1539, those losses were replaced by the conversion to the faith of more than 9 million Aztecs as a direct result of the apparition in Mexico. Second, the dry period ran concurrently with the Spanish Inquisition and the Holy Roman Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition was established in about 1480 by the Spanish King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who also approved and subsidized the Columbus expedition to the New World in 1492. The Spanish Inquisition functioned as a method of secular control by terror in Spain, mostly to protect the monarchy and its power and territories. It operated by secret informants and utilized anonymous reports to ruthlessly stamp out any suspected heresy or anti-monarch sentiments. The Holy Roman Inquisition was instituted in 1549 at Rome, principally to combat the continuing effects of the Protestant Reformation and to stamp out heresy. Since apparitions of the Holy Mother always take place outside of official religious auspices, during the Inquisitions, they would have been deemed heresy or of a diabolical origin. During the dry period of the apparitions, the number of those put to death in Europe by the two Inquisitions is estimated at over 9 million, 3/4 of whom were women. Such terror clearly would have been a deterrent to admitting to having seen an apparition, holy or otherwise. The Spanish Inquisition was not abolished until 1820, while the powers of the Roman Inquisition ceased only in 1829. And then the epoch of the great modern apparitions commenced in 1830. Now, what do you think about that? Do you think that Mother Mary had stopped appearing, or that people just stopped talking about it? It could be either way. A lot of times, she doesn't only appear to women, but a great majority of the time, she does appear to women. And so I didn't know this. I was horrified and fascinated to know that there were 9 million people that were killed in the Inquisition, and 3/4 of them were women. I want to share with you, just so you get an idea, because like I said, there's 22 in here. There's more than I can go. But I want to share with you how he describes the apparition at Fatima, since Fatima is the apparition that began in May and was every month on the 13th of the month until October. And in October 13th of 1917, this is the miracle that had happened. So Mother Mary had been appearing every month to the 3 seers who were young. They were like 8, 9, and I think 12. And she'd been appearing to them, and this was in Portugal, which was trying to become a communist country. It was a lot going on. There was a lot of uprising against the church. There was a lot that was happening there. And again, this was right before the pandemic that had happened. The Spanish flu had happened. This was right at the end of World War I. So here is what we have on page 106. The hamlet of Fatima is located about 110 miles to the north of Lisbon at an elevation of about 3,000 feet above sea level. In 1917, it was a poor rocky area inhabited by peasants, not many in number. The nearest large town was Leiria, about 12 miles to the northwest, once a famous university and the Archdiocesan Cathedral, now shut down. Early in 1916, Lucia dos Santos, age 8, and 2 younger cousins, Jacinta and Francisco Marto, were tending sheep at Chusavela. Pardon me if I'm not saying these names correctly. A field east of Mount Cabeco near Fatima. They reported that a cloud whiter than snow had formed several times. In this cloud, there appeared a youth of about 14 or 15 years of age, dazzling in splendor. He announced himself, "Do not fear, I am the angel of peace. Pray with me." Now, I'm going to stop right there because I had never heard that. I didn't even know that. That's why this book is such a treasure. If you love apparitions and you love knowing the history and the context for these apparitions. I'll continue. There are many sources that report the events of Fatima. They are not clear how the news of the first events was treated, but angels, of course, would have been forbidden to appear and would have been dangerous to their seers. On Sunday, May 13th, 1917, the same 3 children were again tending sheep in a rocky pasture called the Cova da Iria. It was a sunny day. At noon, a beautiful lady appeared near a shrub-like oak tree. According to some sources, she said, "Do not be afraid. I will not harm you." Finding courage to speak, Lucia asked where she was from. "I come from heaven." Then the lady made 3 requests. "I ask you to come here on the 13th day of each month at this same hour until October. Then I would tell you who I am and what I want. She requested that the children should learn to read and write, so that they should say the beads every day to obtain peace for the world and the end of the war. The lady parted her hands, and a great ray of light streamed from them directly upon the children. Then a path opened in the sky as if heaven were opening up to receive her. Okay, and then let me find the apparition. Oh, here it is, page 114. Okay, during the night of October 12th, the remnants of a fearful and unusual storm that had originated in Siberia arrived over Portugal. Blowing westward over Europe, it had scourged with icy downpours both the German and the Allied armies. As the day of the scheduled apparition dawned at Fatima on October 13th, the Cova de Iria was bleak. Black clouds scudded from the northeast. Shapeless fog, biting cold, blew this way and that. The rain, pitiless and steady, continued falling. Photographs exist of the pilgrims gathered to see the Holy Mother's promised miracle. The photos show an enormous sea of big black umbrellas. Early in the morning, at least 50,000 people had gathered, and the number soon increased to between 70 and 90,000. Shortly before noon, the scheduled time, the three young seers arrived. They were escorted by umbrella-carrying members of their extensive families and other close associates. The rain continued as the seers forced their way through the crowd. Every shred of grass and shrubs had been trampled, and beneath the mighty expanse of umbrellas was a vast sea of water and mud. Sanitation was a major problem. The civil authorities were vexed and tired. Antagonistic reporters waited for the miracle that they doubted would occur. So let me just remind you, if you don't know this story, that the sixth miracle, the sixth apparition of Fatima, which was October of 1917, Mother Mary had promised a miracle that everybody would see. Because up until this point, the seers, the three children, were the only ones that ever saw Mother Mary, ever saw the apparition. And I continue. This is on page 115. The seers were kneeling at the site. Noon passed. Nothing had happened. The enormous crowd grew restless and threatening. Then the children indicated that the Holy Mother had arrived. Messages were delivered, and the children reported that a tableau of St. Joseph and the child was being shown to them. No one else saw anything. Hoots and shouts were heard from among the black umbrellas. The seer said that the Holy Mother was departing. Still, no one else saw anything. Shouts of fraud and the children are insane could be heard. A roar of grumbling built up in the steady downpour. Suddenly, Lucia said that the Holy Mother was pointing to the sun behind the roiling clouds. Lucia herself pointed upward. The clouds parted where she was pointing. Lucia shouted, "Look at the sun!" But she hardly needed to tell the people to look. As the clouds parted, the sun hung, suspended like a great silver disk, and the light hurt no one's eyes. There was a rustle of more than 50,000 umbrellas being closed. All faces were turned upward, as can be seen in photographs. As all watched, the sun began rotating, dancing, whirling rapidly like a gigantic pinwheel. Then the sun stopped turning. This phenomenon was repeated twice. At the sun's third whirling, there appeared on its rim a border of crimson, which flung blood-red streamers of flame across the sky, reflecting on the hills, rocks, the upturned faces. Many screams were heard. A succession of brilliant beams of color radiated from the rim of the whirling sun: green, red, orange, blue, violet, the entire spectrum of the rainbow. The beams themselves were whirling, cascading colored lights everywhere and far toward the horizon. Many had fallen to their knees in prayer. The sun began wobbling, and then with no warning plunged toward the earth in a zigzag path, growing in size as it came near. Many witnesses were shocked into immobility, but more fell to their knees, fearing instant death, while others scrambled away on the muddy ground. Then all saw the sun reascend in the same zigzag manner to its usual place overhead. In a few seconds, it resumed its natural brilliance, now hurting the eyes of those trying to look at it. The clouds were gone. It was a brilliant, calm, sunny day. There was not a drop of water or mud anywhere. In fact, there was dust where the mud had been, and the waterlogged shoes and boots and skirts and pants of 90,000 people were completely dry. The awe and the silence were profound. Then came the tears and the roars of acclaim. Several skeptical media persons and police were found in weakened, nearly comatose states. It was said that joy lit up the faces of all, for the promise of the miracle had been delivered. On October 29, 1917, photographs of the upturned faces were published in the Portuguese newspapers and republished throughout the world, along with descriptions of the event. Hundreds of eyewitnesses were interviewed, and most told approximately the same story. A few had seen nothing at all, except that the mud had suddenly disappeared, and everything instantly and inexplicably became dry. Skeptics explained that all of this was a case of mass hysteria. But when it was later learned that the phenomenon had been seen and recorded by separate groups up to 30 miles distant from Fatima, skeptical criticism had dwindled. If you love these stories, my friend, and you love reading about Mother Mary and what happened, and you can see the way that he writes it is just so, it just pulls you right in as if you're right there with them. This is an amazing book. I highly recommend that you get it. I read a little bit of it every night because it keeps me in a really good space before I'm falling asleep. And during these times that we're going through, where there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot that's going on, there's a lot of what I'm calling inner restructuring happening. People are examining what matters to them. They're really looking at their lives. They're really taking a hard look at things we've been told over the years, over the centuries, and do we want to continue to hold those things? There's this huge inner turmoil that's going on. The revolution might not be about what was going on in 1917. It might not look that way, but there is definitely an inner revolution that is happening. And as always, we have Mother Mary's energy. We have the Divine Mother energy here to help us, to guide us, to comfort us, and to always bring us back to prayer. So my friends, this is the book I wanted to share with you this month. I hope that you enjoy it. Of course, I will put the link in the show notes that if you wanted to purchase it, it can be easy for you to do that. And as always, remember that the key to magnifying your miracle is to remember that your miracle is already here. And remember to tune in next week when we have very special guests, Perdita and Clark Strand. They're the authors of the book Way of the Rose. They're coming back for a second time. And we're going to be talking about even more wonderful things with apparitions and novenas and miracles. All right, my friend, take good care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. I'm so grateful to be able to spend this time with you. If you want even more inspiration, feel free to visit my website, francisfaden.com or magnifyyourmiracles.com. And if you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever it is that you connect with awesome podcasts. Remember, the key to magnifying your miracles is remembering that your miracle is already here.